Well, hello there. I am Yasmin West here with RadioBob, here again with Patrick of the Wellness Enterprise. And Bob and we recently had the honor to fly out to Maui and meet Patrick. And so we're just reconnecting now that we're back, and we're going to talk about sacred geometry, and then maybe also, Patrick, if you're open, talk about the cosmic towers, because I there were a couple moments I didn't tell you while I was there, but there were a couple moments where I definitely felt something shift. So
Hmm.
welcome, Patrick. Say hello.
Thanks. Hi, Yasmin. Yeah, thanks for coming out to Maui and thanks for getting together to talk again. I think this sacred geometry topic is the perfect thing to hold our conversation because it opens the underlying harmonic structure of the universe. And that when we understand what's harmony and what's chaos, then all of life starts to make more sense. So, have you studied sacred geometry at all, or what does sacred geometry mean to you?
So I've actually, for the past year and a half, I've been studying with a group that dives pretty deep into the Vedic traditions, that does utilize a lot of sacred geometry imagery in the yantras, and they teach us how to actually properly view the yantras, so that you're chanting a mantra to move around the image and to eventually um, connect within the center of the image. And that's when a lot of downloads and insight can come across, when you're
Yeah.
in a meditative state and staring at sacred geometry. So
Yeah.
I'm I don't know too much about it outside of the Vedic traditions,
That was
but
perfect. That was a
yeah.
perfect intro. If we think about our listeners and we think about the value of having downloads, like where do downloads come from for you? Like, what does that mean? What is a download?
For me, so um I I actually did do like a lot of studying of various psychic development techniques years ago, um, because I wanted to know the difference of what is a true psychic or intuitive hit, or what is something that I'm actually manifesting. So I found that with the downloads and the psychic impressions, it was it was kind of like a pop, either visually or a thought that just pops into my mind.
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to when you're manifesting or you're wanting to create something, that tends to be something that comes from within you, that you're repeating and thinking about over and over again, or visualizing over and over again.
Nice. I would pull on on those threads to say, for me, thinking is an advancement of thoughts that I've had previously, or structures that I've learned, or systems that I've learned.
Mhm.
Whereas a download, or I would say, direct connection to source, like guidance from a different plane of consciousness than the one that I'm in when I'm in school learning, is the appearance of a thought out of nowhere.
Yeah. Kind of
Right?
kind of like it just pops in there, and there was no precursor to explain why you thought that.
Yeah. And there's no course that you took that would make this a natural advancement of that. It's inspiration. It's boom. This is it. Picture is in that being's consciousness. And
Right.
so what I heard you say is that when people focus on this sacred geometry that you're being trained in, it opens a gateway for more downloads, more of these
Mhm.
pop-in type of things.
Yeah.
And so we're living in a world right now where people, whether they know it or not, have been conditioned to think. You
Mhm.
know, we go through the education system and nobody thinks it makes sense. Like like we learned all this stupid stuff that doesn't apply to living a better life. Like I remember I made it through pre-calc with a good grade, and then there was like calculus, and I was like, why would I care? Like, why could I possibly be interested in that? In fact, I would probably say that for the majority of mathematics. But the part of multiplication tables and fractions, oh, how I loved those. Oh, I mean, I can't tell you how much I love multiplication tables and fractions. And then I went on to make millions of dollars in the stock market with fractions being the language that I was working while looking at the prices of the stocks. Stocks didn't used to be in decimals. Like back when I was a stockbroker, they were
Mm.
in fractions. And so I just absolutely adored that. And that was mathematics that made sense to me. So I am here to suggest to people that there's a language of the cosmos. There's a language of this universe that we live in, and it's sacred geometry. And it's of the utmost importance if you're interested in having natural thought and being your authentic self and being open to being inspired by source. You have to begin to let that syntax, the syllables, the letters of that language be in and through you. So if you just focus in on the media and scrolling your phone and the rhythms and patterns created by Apple Computer and Google, you are getting man-made fractals of things that are not harmonic with the origin of our species and the advancement of you as a being. Are you tracking well so far? Do you want to ask any comments or
Yeah,
questions?
I
Yeah.
did have a question. Now I realize when you were working as a stockbroker, you probably weren't as into this type of energy that you are now, but did you ever, because I know they have the Fibonacci sequence, was that something you utilized successfully when you were a stockbroker?
That's where we're going. You,
Okay.
you're
Okay.
you're spot on. So it's funny because whether we know it or not, these patterns are unfolding through us.
Yeah.
And so I had patterns of understanding along with a life purpose that has a lot to do with emotional authenticity. And the stock market is a combination of mathematics and emotion.
Yeah.
And so I knew how to combine the sequences of when things would really get bad and people would just be throwing up their lunch about how they felt. That equals buy, right? And
Yeah.
in most of the world, when people think it's buy is when everybody at the golf club, including the caddy and the members, are all talking about how great something is and it feels good. They think that's when buy is. No, it's when you're throwing up that
Right.
if you want to buy low.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what brought an end to my very successful 18-year career as a financial advisor is that after the 2008 financial crisis, if we followed natural Fibonacci sequence patterns, the stock market should never have gone higher in
Mm.
my lifetime. It was cooked. It was time for a depression if
Mm.
natural forces were allowed to play out. And instead, what happened was Fed Chairman Bernanke was basically helicopter Bernanke. He just dropped money out of helicopters
Mm.
to inflate our way out of a depression, which is very, very hard to do. You have to print trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Well, guess what? They've done it.
Yeah.
They print another $1 trillion about every 100 days, and this does not end well.
Mhm.
Like the system of making money that's not worth anything and convincing the world to believe in it has a moment when it ends, and then that currency ends, and then a new world order in finance comes through.
Yeah.
I could feel that in 2008, 2009, 2010. And my business partners, the hand of God, the kindness and love of my brothers, invited me to take a leave of absence from the business because I was a disaster. And I refused because I was addicted to the money, the competition, the selfishness, the personal orientation. And so 11 days after they asked me to take a leave of absence, my kidneys hurt so much in the middle of the night that I called an ambulance. That's how bad it was. That's a lot of kidney pain.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I saw a doctor who looked at an MRI and he said, "You're very lucky." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you don't have a tumor, you don't have cancer, you're just overstressed." He's like, "I don't know what you do during the day, but you need to stop doing it." And I was like, "Well, I'm a stockbroker and the father of four children, and I have a former wife who is expectant of receiving a certain income. And I can tell you she would never allow me to stop being a stockbroker because she's more addicted to my money than I am." I said, "Would you write a letter that says that I can't do my vocation anymore?" He said, "Absolutely." And so I ended up in court with that letter because it was nastily contested. And she thought I was being a deadbeat. And I was literally just trying to save my life. But what happened in my physical body, these extraordinary bodies that we have that are designed to live in love and joy and thrive in inspiration, passion, and connection to one another, my body literally twisted. So I felt those sequences, that natural rhythm, that natural geometry so fully and so deeply that it twisted my body.
Right.
Wow. Right? And that's
Yeah.
playing out mostly unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
I'm just following the doorways. So there was one thing in those last 3 years of being a financial advisor that I was more passionate about than managing money. And that was getting rid of plastic water bottles on the earth. And the way the dream got placed in me, that inspiration that dropped in, because a lot of things did drop into my consciousness in the 10, 15 years before that. I'd always had an open, intuitive side, was I had environmental interests. And my environmental interests became a chairmanship as the head of the recycling committee in my town. And that gave me the awareness that to get rid of plastic water bottles on the planet, like for real, as though I was actually going to be a part of a team of people that was going to do it, is that recycling's bullshit. Recycling is made up by the petroleum industry, which makes the plastic bottles that they want us to use. And they give us this system of having us believe that by recycling single serve containers, we're actually doing okay by the earth. But during that era, they would take all the plastic and put it on barges and they would send it to Asia and it would get incinerated and go up into our air. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm sorry. Like, I can't believe
No.
it.
Yeah, I actually recently took a tour of our facility, our dump facility where we live, and they actually, to give them credit where credit's due, they do an excellent job of re um, reusing, what they can out of the garbage, and they have robots that pick the recyclable items out, and so they recover a lot more than most places that have like the different bins. So they do a good job, but she said something on the tour which was very eye-opening, and she's like, "Do you know what a recyclable item is?" And everybody chimed in with what they thought, and she's like, "No." It's none of that. It is what is marketable. So what they can resell. So if there's no market for it, it doesn't matter what it's made out of. It's just gonna get dumped.
For sure.
So that
Every
was
time.
super eye-opening as far
Yeah,
as how the truth of the recycling industry.
the truths they're not great.
Yeah.
But the way my life path went is that environmental concern was a hook. And I care about environmental things. I care a lot about the earth, more than I ever have before. But I don't think participating in the vocabulary, the syntax, the letters, the making of sentences inside of the recycling industry is the way to affect change on this earth. The way to affect change on this earth is to unite the people and go through our hearts and to form a world from the authentic heart of human beings. And that's not given the opportunity because the language and rhythms that we get directed onto are chaotic. And this conversation is bigger than most people's capacity to focus and begin to understand. And so in about 2014 or 15, I had become aware that there are these patterns in nature. It's most often shown with the nautilus shell,
Mhm.
right? And that's a good demonstrator of the Fibonacci sequence, and that there are these patterns of nature. And I had seen that in the stock market before, but now I started to see it in plants and in shells. And I had a friend say, "Oh, you're interested in sacred geometry? Here, let me give you a lesson." And she talked to me for about an hour, and then I went to sleep. It was bedtime late, and as I was waking up the next morning, I was having a dream that showed numerals, numbers, becoming shapes, like in geometry, and then the geometry becoming matter. And I was like, oh, that's how it works. There's an underlying mathematics and shape to creation in the universe. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that's really cool. So I started saying 11 years ago that sacred geometry is the syntax, the letters, the sentences of creator. It's how creator creates. And now I've been washing myself in sacred geometry patterned water and things like cosmic towers for more than a decade. And it's starting to come through, and I'm starting to like get it at a different level. And so I just got fascinated by this again recently, and I just started paying attention to it. And one of the things I paid attention to is the what is the Fibonacci sequence and what is the golden mean?
Mhm.
Because I never knew how to differentiate the two. I wanted to figure that out. So the Fibonacci sequence is simply adding the first number and the second number to get the third number, and then you just keep going, adding the two before. So 0 and 1, 0 plus 1 is 1. So 0, 1, 1, then 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, and on it goes. That's the Fibonacci sequence. Now, what gets interesting is as the numbers get bigger and bigger, then they start to get closer and closer to the golden mean, which is 1.618. And so the way you get that is you divide the bigger number by the smaller number, and you get approximately 1.618, and they keep being a little bit above, a little bit below. It's kind of like pi, right?
Okay.
It's like one of those numbers. That's what the golden mean is. And so I started to understand recently that when you look at a sunflower, there are very often instances of Fibonacci sequence numbers like 34, 55, and 89 seeds in a part of the whole spiral. And then I learned when a stem grows and a plant has a stem and that becomes a tree, the way the leaves pattern is using this sequence. And that's the way they get the most sunlight for the amount of space that they have. And you wonder, like, how does a tree put itself together?
Yeah.
That's the way it puts itself together. So what I'm suggesting is that this is the underlying energetic and language of our lives, whether we understand it or not. It has to do with the relationship between how my knuckles fit to my hand to my arm, and my arm to my body. Like it's all closely related. And so if a person is like thinking their way to a better life. They're doing their personal growth work, and they're doing their emotional work, and they're going to yoga and taking care of their body, which is, by the way, sacred geometry poses. And they're not satisfied. Like we never get there in the games that are played in this culture because the games are allowed and structured by businesses that are bigger than us. We don't actually get to shape as much as we think we do. The the antidote is to come back to nature and sacred geometry and simply have a relationship with those, which then repattern ourselves. I'm reminded of a visit I made to one of our affiliates' um, properties in 2017. And she got a text while I was there. And the text was this image.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, my friend Van Dorn makes these things." And I was like, "Who's Van Dorn?" And next thing you know, I'm finishing up with her and I'm driving to Van Dorn's house. He lives about 45 minutes away. And he looks like Morgan Freeman, and he talks like Doc from Back to the Future. And I walk into his space holding a couple of structured water devices. And as I walk in, there are these mobiles of sacred geometry around the living room. Like the whole place is like it's not a home, it's a sacred geometry lab.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, where the fuck am I? You know? So I take my two structured water devices and I hand them to him and I say, I sell these, but I don't understand how they work. What do they do? And he's holding them and he's contemplating them. And I look out the window and there's this shape out on the deck. And I was like, "What's that?" And he says, "Oh, that one." He said, "I had that in here and it was messing with the space-time continuum." It's like, I was like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, I sat down in a meditation in my 3D physical body, and 9 hours later, my body wasn't moving, and my partner was in the room trying to get me to come back to this space-time continuum because I was um, off into another land through that shape." And I was like, wow. I was like, "All right, well, listen, I saw you have this wood pile in the backyard, and it looks like you're not very good at taking care of it." He's like, "Yeah, that could be true." I was like, "Do you have a fireplace?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "How would you like me to split that wood for you?" He's like, "Well, I don't have a tool for that or anything." I was like, "I'll go to Lowe's and buy one." He's like, "You do that for me?" I was like, "Yeah, I love to work out and I love to split wood. Would you give me a copy of this for myself?" And he's like, "Sure." I was like, "I'll split the log pile. You give me a copy of it." So I still have it. I'm still carrying it around because it's very special. It's very special. And so
So
these,
I'm sorry, the
yeah,
one you hold up, is that the one that he said affected the time-space continuum?
no, that was
No.
a physical like make it from squares and circles, and like it was
Oh,
actually in the room.
oh, okay.
It was like 5 feet long. I was like, "What is that thing?"
Wow.
And so, Van Dorn and I have been friends since
Mhm.
2017. And I have a little necklace of his that has like 64 sides on it. And when I wear it, people go, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, it's just messing with the sacred geometry in you. So we have this inherent recognition of these shapes, and they, going back to where you started it, which was perfect, they reconstitute us and the space that we're in, and they allow inspiration to come through. And so, why I do what I do to get rid of the plastic water bottle problem, even though the environmental thing is no longer what makes my heart pulse at all times, it's
Right.
actually the health and consciousness, right? Aspects of things. Like when I wrote my book, which is called Flow, the tagline is from pure and safe water to higher states of consciousness, because it's the higher states of consciousness that I care most about. So I pattern my water with sacred geometry, which activates an awakening process in me that I don't have to think my way through. I just have to keep on drinking and keep aligning. And that's where the cosmic tower comes in that you wanted to talk about, right? Because that is sacred geometry too.
Right. So, I mean, before we get into what it is exactly, I just want to share my personal experience when I was there in your home. There were 2 nights where we just sat down in the living room and were just conversing. And first of all, when the moment I stepped foot on your property, I could feel a sense of ease, peace, calm. But I felt, and we don't need to go into what went on with Bob, but um, there was a difference between my ease and what I was feeling and maybe some of the people around me, right? Um, when we were all sitting that first night next to the tower, I just felt like an instant syncing of all of our energies. We all synced up, and it was so calm, so peaceful, so intuitive. It's like our energies were matched in perfect harmonious frequency. It felt like a symphony playing energetically to me. And I felt that again the next night when we had been there. And I know you had mentioned that just after that conversation, you had um, learned some things about Ben that you didn't realize before. And so that I could definitely feel the energy working in that space. So maybe that gives you some ideas and we can talk about what actually is a cosmic tower and what is it doing to cause something like that to occur in somebody who isn't even trying. It just instantly brings that harmonious feeling and state in someone.
Yeah, what a great way to set the conversation up. So the cosmic tower is an evolution of a mechanical engineer's life for 15 years trying to make himself healthy. And so it's a combination of wood, glass, crystal, and water.
Okay.
Seemingly like not much to most people. Like, okay,
Right.
so there's some construction of wood, glass, crystal, and water that's gonna like make my life better. That doesn't compute if you're in the traditional society. But if you think about the themes that we're talking about here today, 15 years is a lot of life force. And this was a very intentional man. Like when he realized he wasn't well, he read like 500 books about health. He's like, why aren't I well? And he finally concluded that we're all energy. How do I impact myself at the realm of energy? And then he had a son who is clairvoyant and super connected. And so the father, the mechanical engineer, would work on bringing together these four elements, and the son would, as he said, talk to upstairs to see what they should be doing. And it took 15 years to get it right. So it's a collection of nature formulated in sacred geometry, the language of nature, that then when you come into my living room, it creates the space for us to have a dialogue in. So the the conflicts that are created by a modern home that I own that has square corners and dead energies and these LED cans in the living room that I can't even change the bulb to incandescent anymore. I got to change the whole can out. So we
Right.
have these distortions, but when you have the cosmic tower there, the strongest energy wins. And
Mm.
so we were able to sit down in a space that naturally invited coherence. It naturally invited conversation in the direction of the advancement, enlightenment of our species. And so that which was possible that night, like Ben doesn't even know we're talking about him. Ben doesn't even know the bigness of what went on around him. Ben doesn't know how he got witnessed or what was heard about him or the kind hearts that wrap themselves around him and just want his absolute best. But you and I know that all happened,
Right.
right? And so there
Yep.
were levels of what went on. And you know what? There's probably levels of that conversation that you and I don't know about that
Yeah.
happened, right? In the same kind of way.
Yeah.
We just know that we felt good communing,
Yeah.
right? And I've had way more than my share of unwellness, of experiences that required healing. And I think healing is as simple as taking a calm, simple experience of feeling well and then stacking that one on the next, on the next, on the next, on the next, on the next. And eventually you stack so many betters on top of each other that you just feel well. You don't hurt anymore. You're not sick anymore. And I've been through multiple autoimmune things and had them go away. So I know what it's like to get them, feel like they're running your life, and then feel like they're lessening, and then feel like they're gone. And
Well,
so, yeah.
oh, sorry.
Well,
Yeah, and I was
last
just,
sentence. Yeah, last sentence. I don't want to underestimate the benefit of that conversation that we had and
yeah,
how having a coherent conversation stacks health and well-being.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I was just gonna say that's kind of the premise of the energy healing modalities out there is it's kind of that stacking where, I mean, we had talked about the Hawkins scale of vibrational frequencies and emotional states. And, I would never call myself a healer. I'm more a facilitator when I'm in doing that work. And all I'm doing is I'm connecting to source energy, receiving that highest possible frequency that I can hold in my vessel and projecting that out to my healing partner. And they're making the choice whether or not they want to match that frequency or not. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It kind of depends on them. Um, but yeah, and there's that definite stacking of a higher and higher frequency that is there present for us to either accept or reject. But I think with the cosmic tower, and I don't know if everyone felt, I know not everyone in that room was as aware as you and I were of what we were feeling. I don't know if everyone in that room also was feeling that level that we were feeling or not, but it did seem to me that the cosmic towers were able were able to work on that level, whether or not we were accepting of it or not. So, but I don't know.
I think it's all about like awareness and sensitivity.
Yeah.
I recently met a an ordained Cherokee reverend by video call. So he was introduced by somebody. He heard about the cosmic towers and he video called me. And we were hanging out and talking. And he was walking, and we were maybe 15 minutes into getting to know each other. And he was walking across his room to show me some sacred geometry, ironically, on the other side of the room. And I said, the screen was moving. I was like, hey, can you stop and just be with me for a second? And he's like, sure. So he stops. He says, what is it? And I said, the tip of my tongue is tingling strongly. And I feel layers of shifting in my, like, it's like inside my being, but it's no body part. And I don't know what's happening. Can you explain to me what's going on? And he looks really deeply at me, he looks in, and he goes, oh yeah, yeah, me too. He goes, that's the shapes realigning now that we see each other in this lifetime.
Mm.
Like, holy, are you kidding me? Like, that's what that is. And I probably had like 20 or 30 minutes of tongue tickling, tingling in that day, in that conversation with him.
Yeah.
And it literally felt like if you could picture like a triangle in the back of me, like three-quarters of the way back through my being. And it's like moving. And then there's other pieces in other planes that are like moving and realigning. So I've never had an awareness like that before, but I have had experiences with people where they came into my life and it was like obvious that there was something going on. I wonder if that kind of level of realigning plates was happening and I just wasn't aware. So
Mm.
as far as I can tell, as I lean into this, I like to make everything a game. This game of consciousness, it's infinitely deep. It
Yeah.
it I never get to the bottom. I never get to full understanding. I get awarenesses that render everything I thought I understood previously a little bit embarrassing or a little bit like I can't believe I did that for so long because I understand this now. And it's just like that's the stages of the way. So I would suggest, I'm not even suggest, I would, I think everyone is experiencing that whether they know it or not. People's awareness and capacity to sense it has nothing to do with whether it's happening because this is the underlying uh, language, the syntax that creation happens in is these shapes.
Yeah. And I like that. I like that that's possible because it gives us hope, right? For people that we think we can't serve or help, there's something out there that can help them without them realizing it. I mean, it might take them a while to get to the point um, where they're truly conscious and working on themselves, but it's nice to know that there is a frequency present that can help them without them doing the work because I've met a lot of people, especially being in the accounting field. It's a highly skeptical industry. And, for myself personally, I've always had to have that right brain, left brain balance. So I had to have something very logical and mathematical. But there was this whole other side of me, even as a kid, that was off in la la land, right? And feeling energies. So I've I've always been in tune with both those parts of me, but being around people that kind of roll their eyes at that stuff and, poo-poo it and say, "Oh yeah, I don't believe in any of that crap." It's like you don't want to waste your own energy explaining it to them, but you do want to provide them with something that you think might help them out of that. So
Yeah. Clo
it's,
Closed-mindedness is a particularly unhealthy weapon. And I don't know how that got in our species, but
yeah,
curiosity is so much more fun,
yeah,
you know? If we think about, maybe the reason we hate junior high so much, and it's such an extraordinarily painful time of life, is that the conditioning that happens there is about picking apart differences and learning how not to like each other.
mm,
What if we were taught?
yeah,
And so we go through like these major outbreaks of acne and acting out with drugs and alcohol and all this stuff that starts. I mean, kids are doing that younger and younger these days. Maybe it's because the way we're teaching our young people is so out of alignment with nature.
yeah,
Like I get there's a hormonal thing about developing, but that's all part of nature too. There ought to be room for it. And right now it's in like this
right,
control and suppression and all of that. What if what if we could just be open and curious about one another and when people are different, be like, well, that's their cup of tea, you know?
yeah,
I'll go have my tea. And we don't have to have tea together, but I don't need to make my world better by being at war with the difference. You just let the difference be what it is. Like, oh, they're different than me. How interesting.
yeah,
Differences make us grow, but we treat them like there's something to like attack in one another, as though we need to have same values or beliefs. We're never going to. So,
right. And I mean, just I hate talking about politics, but I can't help but use that as a comparison of I remember a time when I was growing up that, you know, two opposing political parties could have a decent conversation with one another. And
yeah.
now it's like what has happened? If you're a different political party, I hate you. Where did that come from?
I know, right? Well, what if that's the
Yeah.
modeling that reinforces the junior high lessons that makes us think that that's where the world is?
Yeah.
You know, the truth for me is that I'm sure watching like humanitarian crises when the tsunami hit Thailand 25 years ago or something like that. And I noticed that like people who were next to me in Massachusetts cried about what happened in Thailand, but they didn't know anybody in Thailand.
Right.
And I was like, what makes that person cry?
Hmm.
And that's when I started to, I actually, I had a hypothesis that I ran in the background of my life for a decade or more. And the hypothesis was, what if everything is one thing? And
Hmm.
so that person crying just has an identification through their heart, through their energetic system, through, quantum entanglement, that when humans hurt, I hurt. Maybe that's what that person was going through. I don't know. Um, I didn't feel that emotion. I don't know anybody in
Right.
Thailand. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I hard-hearted? Why don't I care about those people? Um, but through like all the witnessing of a decade and or more, I realized that I just think of it this way, like all the energy in the universe like started like this, and then it just started going out. And no matter what, you can't get anything that didn't start from the original energy. And so everything is part of the same energy.
Yeah.
So, if I look at my physical body and like its constitution, it is earth, it's water and minerals. We are in the earth. We are connected as like members of and parts of the earth. We're not separable from it. We don't walk on the earth. We live in the earth as earth. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
It's
It,
beautiful.
it truly is. Truly is.
Yeah, it's really magnificent beyond the capacity of a mind to understand. But when we meditate, when we feel our hearts, when we allow ourselves to be expansive, we get these depths of feelings that support, like, wow, there's more to this life than what I learned in junior high. There's more than battling somebody because they have an affiliation with an idea. Those things never feel good.
No. And that is also a key that I kind of saw in my development was the truth can be felt. And it can't be denied. For years, I won't say I was a past life denier, but I couldn't really wrap my head around it. And I was like, well, it might be true, but I don't have any evidence or feeling that it is. And then I was catapulted into one of my past lives during a meditation, and I didn't even realize it was coming. And the amount of emotion that pours through you, the amount of clarity as to why certain things in my current life went the way they did. It all made sense. It all clicked. And I was like, oh, well, okay. I can't I can't say that that's not a truth. We do live and live again.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but it was more of a feeling within my cells, my body, everything. I felt the exact same emotions of, how I died in that past life and why I died. Um, I was just crying like I was that person. And you experience something like that, you can't say, no, this isn't true. There's a truth that happens and you
Yeah.
recognize it.
Yeah, I've always admired people who have those experiences that like take them all the way into the life and have the known experience of it. Um,
Yeah.
that's not my reality. I think it's there. I don't have that doorway open yet. But what I do have is awareness that some things that come across my path are just so much more charged or so much more important or so much more deeply seated. And so um, I had an experience of like just being deathly afraid of being in the water in Boston Harbor and being eaten by a shark. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, there were no shark sightings in Massachusetts for decades. Right now, there are great white sharks up in Boston. It's a different, warmer water and whatever. But at this time, there was nothing. And yet the fear, I was a windsurfer. And so I'd fall off my board and I'd be like terrified. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did a rebirthing breathwork session with my breathwork teacher and her mentor. They came together and we did it in the ocean, in the
Oh, wow.
bay in Duxbury, And like the amount of charge that I have around that, it's like it's just too much.
Right.
So I don't know if I drown, I don't know if I got eaten by a shark, I don't know what's up with all that, but it's way more than a current life experience kind of thing. So
Yeah.
and then
I,
there's people that I meet that there's like
Mhm.
way more than a current life experience kind of thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and I would say that those are probably your clues as
Hmm.
to something that you lived previously.
I think so.
Because, yeah, you wouldn't have such a strong reaction. unless you had had like an accident or something in this current life to cause you to feel that way, that has to be coming from another place.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
That's what tells me,
Yeah.
you know? And then also another thing that tells me is I witness my own lineage, and in the patterns I see in my father and then I see in my sons. And then I've done a lot of emotional work. And one of my favorite techniques is called the emotion code. And it's been a really great technique for expanding my sensitivity and awareness. And inside of that, there was a period of time over about 2 years where when I kind of cleared out a lot of a style of emotion out of me, so I wasn't charged anymore, I started to get 7 generations of men going back through my father's lineage who would come to the sessions. And I could feel these goosebumps of their presence, and I could feel them like cheering me on. And like the culmination of it was like, 200 years ago, we didn't have the resources or the strength or the awareness to do the work that you're doing, but we're still hurting from it. And so we're here witnessing you and like giving you all of the energetic support that we can, because as you release these things in you, we all lose it. Like it releases, it completes in all the lifetime. So that's my personal experience. I'm not asking anybody to validate it. I don't care. Like I just want to be healthy and feel well myself. I notice when I get in discordant emotions, when I get in anger and frustration and revenge or rage and these type of things, and I don't want to live there. And so
Right.
this is my path to freedom through that. And that's my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So circling back to sacred geometry,
Yeah.
question, what in the cosmic towers, is there a specific way? Because I know with the Aqua Energizer, you incorporate that. Is there a specific way that that's incorporated in the cosmic towers as well?
Yeah. I mean, 15 years of evolution, and the whole point was not known at the beginning, it wasn't like a goal, but it
Mhm.
became the outcome, was to create something that takes harmonic information, a full rainbow spectrum of information from water that's inside each tower, and spins it subatomically at um at the pattern of a torus. And
Oh, okay.
that's it. Like it's so simple. Like a torus spin or a toroidal field, if people might have heard of it that way, is the energy direction or pattern that is around every one of your electrons. And from the teeniest tiny parts of the, sub-cell components all the way up to around a tree and around the earth and around the whole galaxy, energy flows in a pattern of a torus.
Right.
And so we have full spectrum rainbow harmonic energy from water spinning in a torus. That's it. It's the name of the game.
Yeah, that makes complete sense because I've studied a lot of stuff with shungite and it operates similarly to create that harmonious spin as opposed to the unharmonious spin, which we're getting from our Wi-Fi, our EMFs, and all that stuff.
That's why this works. And so if you look at people's level of consciousness, the majority of the culture knows about these, or no, the majority of the culture is beginning to know about the impacts of Wi-Fi and be curious whether it's impacting health and well-being.
Yeah.
And their relationship to it is that they want to block it, resist it,
Mhm.
cause it not to be. And there's a very simple way to tell you all of the blocking technologies are bullshit. which is nobody's cell phone stops working when they have a blocking technology.
Yeah.
It's not being blocked. So the next layer up of consciousness, what people are dialoguing with about that is, okay, if I turn on this computer that I'm talking to you on and I go to select a Wi-Fi, there's going to be my Wi-Fi and then all the others that are within reach. So if you're in a New York City apartment, maybe 50 or 100 Wi-Fi are right there. If you're out in the country, maybe one or two or three.
Yeah.
All of those energy fields are being picked up by your computer. So they're also being picked up by your body.
Right.
So the energy is going to be there. There's no escaping it anymore. Like our technology's gotten too big for the size of our planet.
Yeah.
We've polluted everywhere. So if the energy is going to be there and you can't block it or resist it or protect yourself from it, then the best thing to do is if you think about a bullfighter and the way they say ole as they lift the cape gently and the bull goes by, is to allow that energy to go through your space and go through your being, but have it be harmonized. And the way you harmonize it is you cause a stronger harmonic energy than the force of the distorted one.
Right.
So a cosmic tower creates a harmonic energy field, and you and I have attuned our consciousness to be aware of that. So we
Yeah.
feel the cosmic tower more. People who are at a different consciousness, they say, I don't feel anything. Well, that doesn't mean it's not working.
Right.
It just means your sensitivity isn't there. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I want scientific proof. Of course you do. If you can't feel it, that's what you want, right? But
Yeah.
once you start to feel, you go, that's all
It's
I need.
there. It's
Like you
there.
just understand Olay. You understand. No, I'm not going to run straight at the bill and grab his horns and see if I can throw him down. I'm just going to go away. And once you understand that, you Olay Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that, they get really fearful of this Wi-Fi and EMF stuff. And, first of all, I've studied Hawkins vibrational scale, and I'm like, I'm not going to be afraid of anything because I know whatever problem is out in the world, there's going to be a solution for it. I just need to find it. And so even before I was aware of shungite, I found other ways, there's certain gemstones that can help with that as well. So, yeah,
ugh,
yeah, just because you can't feel it doesn't mean it's not working, and it's not something to be afraid of. There's always going to be a solution as well.
well, we're triggered and controlled by our fears.
Yeah.
It's part of our wiring that makes it so easy to control us. So you pump people full of fear, and they will behave in certain ways.
I lost my mother to fear. She
I'm
was
sorry.
so afraid of the CV-19 that she jabbed herself to death.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It and I tried to tell her it's like, you gotta get a handle on your fear. Um, and it's the one thing if I see someone who's struggling, it's the one thing I try and impress on them is like, just get a handle on your fear. And you can think this through on your own once you're not in fear.
When I was when I was 29, I made 100 and something $1,000 in the year. Next year, I made $1 million. It's a big jump. And that year and the year after, my health fell apart. While I was making all that money, I was like, wait a minute, like it's the American dream to make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I have, I very quickly purchased a big house across the street from the water. I remodeled it. I bought a boat. I bought a Porsche. And what I noticed was I woke up every day with fear in my heart. Like, that's the way I would describe it. I wake up and get out of bed and be like, I'm not enough. I'm unworthy. What can I do to make up for how I feel inside? And so God's so clever. So eventually I started to feel better about myself. And so that house and that Porsche and that boat were all stripped away from circumstances the way my life went. And in the stripping away of them, the tears and the heartbreak with the attachments, and then the awareness that those things never made me happy. And that when I actually, it's when I started gardening. My first garden started in
Mm.
2010. And then in 2012, I got a structured water device and I watered my garden with structured water. And it was so prolific. I didn't know anything about gardening that I put a little stand on the side of my yard and started selling the excess produce to my neighbors
Oh,
because
wow.
I couldn't eat it all. And it's then that I learned that walking, you know what really makes me happy? Using a rototiller barefoot. Now I know your mom will tell you, watch your toes, I get it, but it's turning up the negative ions in
Mm.
the dirt barefoot that made me so happy. And so I learned to walk barefoot on the earth, and that makes me feel wealthy. Like wealthy is like, wow, I went out to get the zucchini today and there's five of them. I can't possibly eat more than one and a half. I am so wealthy. And those drops in the bucket started to fill my bucket with a different sense of what life is about. And so um, those good feelings started to replace the feelings of fear. You know, I used to get really angry when I was younger. I had a lot of anger. I loved football because I got to knock people down. I loved rugby because I got to do it without pads. And and then I loved splitting wood because I could just bash and bash and bash and not hurt anything, you know? And I learned to like let that poison out of me. And with it came space. And so it's pretty rare now, but every now and then something happens that makes me angry. And because of the emotional work that I've done, I can release it really quite quickly. Like the trigger of it is gone. I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here. This just reminds me of that old thing I used to fear, and it just played out. And that's why I'm being this way. Okay, cool. I'm not going to be that way anymore. But the energy that comes from it doesn't go away as quickly as the resolution of the trigger part. And so now I use anger once I resolve it as rocket fuel. I'm like, oh, I'm really fired up with the energy of anger today. I could create anything because I have so much energy. So I look at like when I'm in those spaces, like what's the hardest thing in my life right now that I've been avoiding that needs a lot of energy? I'm like, let's go get it, you know, and I'll go through a wall. So
Transmutation.
yeah, those processes are essential. They're not instantaneous. You know, drinking water patterned with sacred geometry doesn't resolve them in a day. Like there's no like miracle. It's like this is the journey of life. This is the life we live. But having awareness if that's what's going on is really helpful. Like, oh, I'm just learning how to, as you say, handle your fear. I'm just learning how to handle my fear and put it down. And handling fear has to do with making courageous choices, courageous choice to do it differently. So that feeling comes over, you're like, it's bigger than me. I don't know how to handle my fear. Like, yeah, Yasmin, I'm gonna handle my fear. Do you know how scared I am in here? Like, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna take a walk or I'm gonna split some wood, or like whatever the thing is, but you go to nature, you go to breath, you go to water, you go to sight of views of, smelling something that smells good, roses or whatever. And then you start to like have a different feeling. And you're like, oh, maybe I can get past my fear. And then after a while, the fears come running down the hallway at you, and you're like, "Ha ha! I see you. I've felt you. I've seen you debilitate me, and I know now that you're not real. That was just me being fearful." Yeah,
What a crazy life it is.
yeah. Well, this conversation about sacred geometry, I'm so glad we're having it. It makes me feel safe and whole. It makes me feel like I can make sense of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to, well, I am working with it. I'd like to find a way to incorporate it as more than just an image and more into the way that I'm approaching my life and situations. So,
Yeah.
h-
Well.
how do you use it?
How do I use it? The cosmic
This,
tower? The sacred
the sacred
geometry.
geometry.
Um, uh, I've been asked, who are you? And I've answered in many different ways in different contexts. I used to be my vocation. I used to be a father, provider. And one of the ways I've answered that question that has felt relevant ever since I said it is I'm a pattern of shapes that are flowing.
Okay.
Like
There you
I'm
go.
not I'm not that different than this. And that recent meeting with the ordained Cherokee Reverend, when those shapes realigned in me, and he said it's, yeah, us recognize each other in this lifetime. I was like, oh my gosh, like that was a big experience for me. So how I use it is I choose it and I pattern myself with it,
Okay.
and I trust. So I don't know how many years it's been since I intentionally turned a television on to hear the vibration of news, but it's been a while. Um, and if somebody's listening to that, I'll walk away. And if somebody has that on in their home, I'm just not going to go there anymore. Like maybe for a couple minutes by accident, but I recognize the energetic signatures of things, and I guess our inner worlds and outer worlds reflect each other. And, I truly want to like be just ultimately so humble about this because I'm so honored that it happened. There was a time not that many years ago where despite all the money that I made when I was younger, I lost a lot of money through divorce and anger. And I didn't have much. I mean, I remember my kids wanting 20 bucks. You know, this is post having $5 million to my name. This is afterwards. And I was like, I don't really have 20 bucks for you right now.
Mm,
And I'm
that's
now,
that's hard.
it is hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm now sitting on a half an acre of pretty wild land in a wild place. And I get to like interact with the trees and all the nature of it. And I get to like really live outside a lot and be barefoot a lot. I took a picture of my dirty feet yesterday because I was so amused with myself. After planting a tree, I was like, my bare feet are positively as gross as they could be. I love that. So somehow, after going through the stage of having 5 million bucks, a Porsche, and living across the street from the water, and then living in a rental for 10 years, and then having a time where I didn't feel like I had 20 bucks for my kids, I'm back to a really wealthy feeling life that has everything to do with the vibrancy of what grows in nature and the food that can be cultivated, and that's my current outer reflection in my inner world. So I think continuing to pattern oneself naturally is pretty lucky. I think the way, like, I've had two careers and the second one is now 13 years. The first one was 18 years. So it's, pretty big bites. And I would say the first one was karmic and egoic and separate and unconscious. And the second one is trusting, allowing, connected, natural. So the second one's a lot better than the first one was.
Yeah.
And even though I don't have the same kind of financial abundance, there seems to be enough financial support to reflect back to me from the outer world good feelings about my inner world. I feel good about myself. Feel thankful.
Yeah. And, abundance is truly a state of mind. I mean, we can
Yes,
we can have all the money in the world and still feel that crushing feeling of lack, that
for sure.
there's never enough, even though there is. And yeah, that was kind of I've always, when I felt sometimes, okay, I I didn't plan, like I planned, but I didn't plan for this to happen. Um, it still works out. And I'm like, how how am I making it? How is money available to cover this? I don't know. It's just working. It's like yeah. And
Totally.
I found the more I trust that the resources will be there when I need them, they are. So,
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing.
yeah. And it's kind of, it starts to become kind of like a dance, an energetic dance where um yeah, you're just surfing the energetic waves, and sometimes it dips down, and that's when you're a little concerned, but you pop back up and you're fine. So,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah, I
more
went from
you
it. Yeah, I went from a time where I would make enough to buy a Porsche in a month to, wow, my car is gonna die soon and I don't have money to buy a new one. I'm gonna have to lease a car.
right.
And the business isn't doing well enough to pay for the lease on the car or to buy the car. And I was like, okay, well, that's just the way it is. I've been at this 8 years and I'm not being successful enough to support buying a car. Okay. I was like, I'm really hopeful I'm going to be able to buy a car. And in 6 months, the money to buy a car gathered itself and sat in my bank account. And so when that minivan that I raised my kids in was like, there were no more places to duct tape that would help. You know, the fuse on the side door had been removed for a year and a half, and there was just, I mean, we were just barely holding it together, and
Mhm.
in popped the resources to buy a pickup truck with 54,000 miles on it, and I have a car. Like,
There you go.
wow, Yeah. And they gave me $1,000 for that minivan. And I was like, oh my God, I'll so take that.
I've
Yeah.
had a car like that. I was just so grateful the dealer would take it. You
So grateful.
know?
Yeah. It was such a good ride while it did its job. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation on sacred geometry and energy and everything connected.
Yeah. Feels really good to talk like
Yeah.
this. I really hope it makes a difference in people's lives and gives them time to
Yeah.
reflect that there is a natural order that's here supporting us and we can align with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know when I was on my journey, it's like I would experience something, but I would need the validation sometimes that
Sure.
it was a thing and other people felt it as well. So, the more conversations we can have like this in the world, I think it helps others. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for creating the space for it. It's lovely to talk with you today, Yasmin.
Absolutely. And we'll have to meet again, maybe when
Sounds
it's
good.
not so wet in Maui.
When's that gonna be?
You'll have to tell us.
All right. Don't hold your breath.
All right.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Thank
Okay.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.